This video will go over the Grammar for Style and Clarity section of the Tease Prep Study Manual, version 5. All this information can be found on pages 186 to 187. There are two things you need to consider when you're writing, and those are your purpose, why you're writing, and your audience, who will read your writing. Your purpose and audience will determine how you write, the style you consider to use, the vocabulary words you use. So it's important to keep purpose and audience in mind when looking at the tease questions to determine if the sentences are written appropriately. We are going to go over 5 factors that can change sentence meaning: coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, nominalization, and active and passive verbs. Coordinating conjunctions are words that join two ideas and make each idea equal, and that is a key thing to memorize for the tease test. The test may give you a choice of sentences and ask you which sentence combines the two ideas and makes them equal or makes one idea more important. So when you see a coordinating conjunction, that means the two ideas are equal. Coordinating conjunction words are fanboys. F for for, A for and N for nor, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, and S for so. Those are the only 7 coordinating conjunctions in the English language, so they are pretty easy to memorize. Here are some examples of coordinating conjunctions in sentences. First I went to school, and then I went to work. The coordinating conjunction is and. Because this sentence uses a coordinating conjunction to combine the two independent clauses, the two ideas are equally important to the writer. Going to school and going to work are of the same importance. Another example is I know I will do well in English, but I am not as confident about science. In this sentence, the coordinating conjunction is the word but. Because a coordinating conjunction is used, doing well in both English and science are equally important to the writer. Study hard so you can pass the test. In this sentence, the coordinating conjunction is the word so, and because we are combining two independent clauses with the word so, both studying and passing are equally important. Another type of conjunction is the subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunctions are words or phrases that join ideas and make one idea less important than the other. So let's review. Coordinating conjunctions make the ideas equally important. Subordinating conjunctions make one idea less important. One way you can remember this is by thinking of where else you've seen the word subordinate. In some workplaces, employees who report to a supervisor are called subordinates. Therefore, one way to look at that is that they are less important than the supervisor. So subordinating conjunctions make one idea less important. The idea that is less important is the clause that has the subordinating conjunction attached to it. There are many subordinating conjunctions, and I could never list them all, but to give you an idea of some of them, you can use the acronym BATWOs. So some subordinating conjunctions are because, before, although, as if, after, though, when, where, while, once, only if, even though, or since. Now, unlike the coordinating conjunctions for fanboys, where there were only 7 coordinating conjunctions, these are not the only 7 subordinating conjunctions. The acronym BATWOs is just to help you remember what types of words these are. Here are some examples of subordinating conjunctions in sentences. I went to school before I went to work. The subordinating conjunction is before. This means that school is more important than work to the writer. We can tell this because the subordinating conjunction before is attached to the clause I went to work. That makes this entire clause, before I went to work, a dependent clause because it cannot stand as a complete sentence by itself. The part of the sentence that is still an independent clause, I went to school, is more important. If work were more important than school to the writer, the sentence would have to be changed to say, I went to work after I went to school. And now we have put the subordinating conjunction with the clause that talks about school. We've left the clause that talks about work as an independent clause, and now that idea is more important. Here's another example. I know I will do well in English, though I am not as confident about science. The subordinating conjunction in this sentence is the word though. This means that doing well in English is more important to the writer, because the subordinating conjunction though is attached to the clause that talks about science. If science were more important, the sentence would be changed to attach a subordinating conjunction to the clause that talks about English, like this. I am not sure what I will do well in science, although I know I will do well in English. Nominalization is another type of writing style that we can see in sentences. And nominalization means that you're taking a verb, an adverb, or an adjective and turning it into a noun. Why would you use nominalization? Well, to be purposely vague or unclear in your writing, to avoid assigning blame. Again, this takes into consideration your purpose for writing and who your audience is. You can also use nominalization to avoid taking responsibility. Before we look at examples of nominalization in sentences, let's look at how nominalization works to change a different part of speech into a noun. So the verb react, if nominalized, would become the noun reaction. The verb state, if nominalized, would become the noun statement. The adjective American becomes the noun Americana. The adjective free becomes the noun freedom. The adverb progressively becomes the noun progression. And the adverb ideally becomes the noun idealist. When you see nominalization, a noun, in a sentence that could be a different part of speech, you need to use an active verb to fix it to change the sentence. Active verbs are verbs that show action. Some active verb examples would be act, break, carry, dig, escape. So here are some examples of nominalization in sentences. Joe had a negative reaction to the presentation. The nominalized noun is reaction, because this could be the verb react. This sentence focuses on the reaction itself, not who had the reaction. So we are avoiding assigning blame to Joe. If I wanted to move the focus to Joe instead of to the reaction, I would have to use the active verb react and make the sentence say, Joe reacted negatively to the presentation. This sentence now is assigning the blame and the reaction to Joe. Here's another example. Susie made a statement about the red car hitting the black one. The nominalized verb in this sentence is statement. Here, we're focusing on the fact that a statement was made, but not who made the statement. If I wanted to focus on Susie, I would have to change the noun statement to the verb state. And that sentence would say, Susie stated that the red car hit the black one. Now I'm making it very clear who gave the statement. Passive verbs is a verb, a form of the verb be, so is, are, am, was, were, plus the past tense of the verb, and then usually followed by the word by. When you use passive verbs in a sentence, the subject, the person who did the action, is moved to the end of the sentence. Why would you use passive verbs? Well, for the same reasons you would use nominalization, to avoid assigning blame, to avoid taking responsibility. So here are some examples of verbs before we look at sentences. The active verb take, in its passive form, would say was taken. The active verb create, in its passive form, would say was created. To fix passive verbs, you would use active verbs and rearrange the sentence. As we just said, active verbs show action, and some examples I'm going to list here. So the passive verb was acted becomes the active verb act. Passive was broken becomes active break. Was carried becomes carry. Was dug becomes dig. Let's fix some sentences that use passive verbs. The shoe was chewed by the dog. Was chewed by is our passive verb phrase. This sentence focuses on the fact that the shoe got chewed up, but not so much on the fact that it's the dog who did the chewing. So this is an example of avoiding assigning blame. If we wanted to change the sentence to focus more on who chewed the shoe and to get rid of this passive construction, we would say the shoe was chewed. Now this focuses the fact that the shoe was chewed and takes the dog out altogether, but it is still passive. But it relieves the dog of all blame. If I wanted to blame the dog and make this an active sentence, it would say, the dog chewed the shoe. Here's another example. I was told by Jean that there would be food at this meeting. The active verb phrase is was told by Jean. This focuses on what I was told instead of who told me. I could also say I was told there would be food at this meeting. I still have the passive verb phrase was told. Now I'm not mentioning Jane at all and I'm removing all blame from her completely. But what if I wanted to focus more on who told me, or I wanted to blame Jane for the fact that I'm starving? I would have to use active verbs, and my sentence would say, Jane told me there would be food at this meeting. That covers nominalization, active verbs, passive verbs, coordinating conjunctions, and subordinating conjunctions, all part of the Grammar for Style and Clarity section of the TEAS Test Study Manual.